Everyone's preparing for the economic collapse, buying gold, stockpiling cash, diversifying investments, growing food. They're preparing for the wrong thing. The next financial reset won't just restructure currencies, it will restructure how you think about value, trust, and survival itself. It will attack your psychology before it touches your wallet, and the people who don't understand this will comply with their own enslavement while thinking they're being rescued. If you're watching this, you already sense something's off about CBDCs, universal basic income, and social credit systems. You're right to be suspicious. I'm breaking down the 5 psychological weapons being deployed in the next financial reset, how they'll control behavior at a level no economic system has ever achieved, and what you can do to protect not just your wealth, but your mind. Number 5 is already being used on you right now. Number 1 will make you check your bank account immediately. Let's get into it. The economic reset is just the cover story. Most people think the financial reset will look like Weimar Germany or Zimbabwe. Hyperinflation, bank runs, new currency. They're stockpiling tangible assets. That's not what's coming. The next reset is about control infrastructure, not currency restructuring. Yes, there will be economic chaos, but the real goal is implementing psychological control systems that make financial independence impossible. Here's what's different. The technology now exists to link your ability to transact with your behavior, your beliefs, your compliance. Central bank digital currencies aren't just programmable money, they're programmable you. Think about that for a second. When money becomes entirely digital and entirely controlled by central authorities, every transaction becomes a behavior modification tool. You're not spending money, you're demonstrating compliance, proving loyalty, generating data that determines your future access. The economic collapse is real, but it's the catalyst, not the goal. The goal is creating a population that self-regulates behavior to maintain system access. That's psychological control operating through economic mechanisms. Here are the 5 weapons they're deploying. Weapon number 5, manufactured scarcity creates compliance addiction. Most people think scarcity during collapse is accidental. Supply chain failures, economic breakdown. Some scarcity is organic. Strategic scarcity is engineered. Here's how it works. Create or allow shortages of essentials. Food, fuel, medicine. Let the panic build. Let people experience genuine desperation. Then introduce the solution. A new financial system that guarantees access to scarce resources, but only if you participate in digital identity and tracking infrastructure. The psychology is brutal. When people are scared and hungry, they don't resist control systems. They embrace them as salvation. Universal basic income isn't marketed as control. It's compassionate. Relief. CBDCs aren't surveillance. They're efficiency and security. Social credit isn't authoritarianism. It's fairness and safety. By the time people realize what they've accepted, they're too dependent to resist. Opting out means losing access to food distribution, medical care, financial services. The system doesn't force compliance through violence. It achieves compliance through manufactured necessity. Here's the mind-blowing part. This was beta tested during COVID lockdowns. Governments demonstrated they could shut down economic activity, control movement, and condition populations to accept restrictions in exchange for safety. Vaccine passports weren't about health. They were proof of concept for linking system access to compliance verification. The lesson learned, people will accept almost anything if you control access to survival resources and frame compliance as responsible citizenship. The next reset uses this exact playbook. Create crisis, offer solution, make solution, conditional on behavioral compliance. Most people won't resist because resistance means deprivation. Humans avoid immediate suffering even at the cost of long-term freedom. You're watching scarcity being engineered right now. Supply chain disruptions that never fully recover. Food processing plants experiencing fires at statistically impossible rates. Energy shortages in resource-rich nations. Not all accidents, not all incompetence. Strategic preparation. When the reset comes and they offer guaranteed food access through digital ID linked to CBDC wallet, millions will line up gratefully. They won't see the chains because the chains are invisible, made of dependency, surveillance, and algorithmic control. In 2022 alone, there were 97 major food facility fires or explosions in the United States. The historical average is 10 to 15 annually. Think about that. But scarcity is just the first weapon. The second attacks something deeper. Weapon number 4, gaslighting value. Until you trust only the system. Most people understand fiat currency has no intrinsic value. It's backed by trust in government. What they don't realize? The next reset will systematically destroy your ability to value anything outside the official system. This is psychological warfare targeting your perception of worth itself. Here's the process. destabilize all alternative stores of value. Gold prices manipulated through paper markets, cryptocurrencies attacked through regulation and infrastructure denial, real estate devalued through strategic crashes, physical assets made difficult to trade. They're systematically removing exit options. Simultaneously, they promote CBDCs as stable and safe compared to the chaos of unregulated alternatives. The narrative: only government-backed digital currency maintains real value. Everything else is speculation, risk, or criminal activity. But here's where the gaslighting intensifies. They'll redefine what constitutes legitimate economic activity. Peer-to-peer transactions outside the digital system become tax evasion, money laundering, terrorist financing. Barter and informal economy activity get criminalized as undermining monetary stability. Accumulating physical assets like gold or food becomes hoarding and antisocial behavior. The goal is making you doubt your own judgment about value. When your physical gold is hard to spend, when your cryptocurrency can't buy groceries, when your stored food is legally questionable, you start internalizing that the only real value exists within the system. They want you to believe value is whatever they say it is. This is profoundly psychological. Throughout human history, value has been diverse. Shells, salt, livestock, precious metals, spices. Humans have always recognized value in multiple forms. The reset aims to collapse all value into a single, controllable digital form where the issuing authority determines worth algorithmically. Think about the implications. When the system can program money to expire if not spent, that's not monetary policy. That's restructuring your relationship with savings and future planning. When the system can limit what you're allowed to purchase, that's not regulation. That's controlling your access to independence. When the system can revoke your financial access for wrongthink, that's not enforcement. That's thought control through economic coercion. China already does this. In 2022, over 23 million Chinese citizens were blocked from purchasing plane or train tickets due to low social credit scores. Not for crimes, for behavior. They're not just changing what you use as money, they're changing how you think about value, independence, and survival itself. The gaslighting works because it operates gradually. Each step seems reasonable in isolation. Fighting money laundering sounds good. Preventing tax evasion seems fair. Stopping terrorist financing appears necessary. But the end result is total financial surveillance and control. By the time you realize you can't buy, sell, or save without system permission, it's too late. You've internalized that real value only exists where they allow it. That's psychological capture, masquerading as financial policy. But even if you resist the gaslighting, the third weapon makes independence nearly impossible. Weapon number 3, social pressure as enforcement. Your neighbor becomes the police. Most people assume enforcement will come from government agencies and police. That's not the main mechanism. The real enforcement will come from your neighbors, coworkers, family, and friends. Social credit systems don't just track your behavior, they incentivize others to monitor and report your noncompliance. This turns communities into enforcement networks without the government lifting a finger. Here's how it functions. Link financial benefits to social scores that reflect not just your compliance, but your associations. If you interact with low-score individuals, your score drops. If you report noncompliance, your score rises. If you maintain relationships with system outsiders, you risk contamination. The psychological impact is devastating. People will self-isolate from non-compliant friends and family, not because they disagree politically, but because association threatens their economic survival. Parents pressure children to comply to avoid family score impacts. Employers avoid hiring low-score workers. Landlords reject low-score tenants. This isn't theoretical. China's social credit system has been operational since 2014. The behavioral impacts are documented. People censor themselves, avoid controversial associations, and inform on others. Not from ideological loyalty, from economic self-preservation. A 2021 study found that 78% of Chinese citizens changed their behavior specifically to avoid social credit penalties. 78%, the Western. Implementation will be marketed differently. Not social credit, but trust scores, ESG ratings for individuals, decentralized reputation systems. But the psychological mechanism is identical. Make compliance socially rewarded, make noncompliance socially punished through economic incentives. Here's the truly insidious part. This makes active enforcement unnecessary. People police themselves and each other. You don't need secret police when everyone is economically incentivized to monitor compliance and report deviations. The surveillance state becomes distributed, voluntary, and self-sustaining. Imagine trying to maintain financial independence when transacting with you lowers someone's social score. Imagine building community when associating with you threatens others' system access. Imagine teaching your children alternative values when their future economic opportunities depend on documented compliance. The psychology breaks resistance at the community level. Even people who understand the control mechanisms face intense pressure to comply, not from abstract government authority, from concrete social and economic consequences enforced by people they know. This is why they're engineering loneliness and social fragmentation before the reset. Isolated individuals are easier to control than cohesive communities. When your social connections are already weak, the threat of further isolation through score penalties is terrifying. When your community bonds are strong, collective resistance becomes possible. They know this. That's why social atomization, distrust building, and community destruction have been accelerating. By the time the reset implements score-based systems, most people will already be too isolated to organize collective resistance. The enforcement won't come from soldiers. It will come from your desperate neighbor who reports your alternative economy activity to protect their family's food access, from your coworker who distances from you to avoid score contamination, from your own family members who choose system compliance over familial loyalty because the economic pressure is unbearable. That's the third weapon. But if you resist social pressure, the second weapon attacks at an even deeper level. Weapon number 2, learned helplessness through complexity and dependency. Most people can't explain how their current financial system works. Fractional reserve banking, monetary policy, bond markets, derivatives. The complexity is deliberate. It creates learned helplessness where people abdicate financial understanding to experts and authorities. The next system will be exponentially more complex while appearing simpler on the surface. CBDCs will have elegant user interfaces, simple apps, easy transactions, instant settlements. But beneath that simplicity is algorithmic complexity that no individual can audit, challenge, or understand. Here's the psychological weapon. When you can't understand how the system works, you can't identify when you're being exploited or controlled. When the rules are opaque and change algorithmically, you can't plan or strategize. When the mechanisms are too complex to comprehend, you develop learned helplessness, the psychological state where you stop trying to exert control because you believe control is impossible. This has been studied extensively in psychology. When animals or humans face unpredictable, uncontrollable negative outcomes, they eventually stop trying to avoid or resist. They accept the situation as unchangeable. That's learned helplessness, and it's incredibly effective for breaking resistance. The financial reset will engineer this deliberately. Your CBDC wallet will have simple functions for daily use, but the rules governing it will be algorithmically complex and constantly shifting. Spending limits, transaction approvals, account restrictions, all determined by opaque scoring systems you can't see or challenge effectively. When your transaction is rejected, you won't know why. Low social score, wrong merchant category, algorithmic risk assessment. The explanation will be vague. This transaction cannot be completed at this time. No appeal process, no transparency, just algorithmic rejection. The psychological impact is profound. When you can't predict what will be allowed or denied, you become cautious and conservative. You self-censor spending patterns to avoid mysterious rejections. You avoid anything that might trigger unknown algorithmic flags. You become compliant not because you understand the rules, but because you fear unpredictable punishment. Simultaneously, the system creates dependency by handling everything for you. Automated tax payments, mandatory savings programs, algorithmic investment allocations, auto-enrollment in government services. It's framed as convenience and optimization. The real effect is removing your agency and understanding. When the system does everything automatically, you lose the knowledge of how to do it manually. When you don't understand the mechanisms, you can't operate outside them. That's dependency engineering disguised as user experience improvement. Here's the terrifying comparison. We already see this with technology. Most people can't repair their smartphones, explain how internet infrastructure works, or understand the algorithms curating their information environment. This creates dependency on tech companies and vulnerability to manipulation. Now imagine that same dynamic applied to your money, your transactions, your ability to survive economically. You won't resist a system you don't understand and can't survive without. You'll accept algorithmic control because the complexity makes resistance seem futile and the dependency makes independence impossible. The average person interacts with 14 different algorithms daily just in their phone usage. Financial apps, social media feeds, search results, shopping recommendations. You can't explain how any of them work, but they shape your decisions constantly. Now multiply that opacity and apply it to every financial transaction you make. The financial system becomes a black box that feeds you, restricts you, and shapes your behavior through mechanisms too complex to audit and too embedded to escape. That's learned helplessness weaponized through technological complexity and engineered dependency, but even learned helplessness can be overcome if people wake up and organize resistance. That's why they need the first and final weapon, the one that makes conscious resistance nearly impossible. Weapon number 1, time compression and cognitive overload, breaking your ability to think. Most people assume that during a crisis, they'll think clearly, assess options rationally, and make good decisions. That's not how stress psychology works. Under extreme pressure and information overload, human cognition breaks down. We default to authority, seek simple answers, and grasp at immediate solutions. The next financial reset will be designed to maximize cognitive overload and minimize clear thinking. This is the final psychological weapon, creating conditions where rational resistance becomes psychologically impossible for most people. Here's the mechanism: multiple simultaneous crises creating information chaos, financial collapse coinciding with food shortages, energy crises, social unrest. Each crisis demands attention and decision-making while you're already overwhelmed. Media amplifies panic with conflicting information. Social media spreads rumors and confusion. Official sources change guidance frequently. In this environment, cognitive load exceeds capacity. You're trying to protect your family, navigate shortages, understand financial changes, and process contradictory information simultaneously. Your brain can't handle it. You enter psychological survival mode, where complex analysis becomes impossible. This is when they introduce the solution. Clean, simple, official. Enroll in the new system and your problems are solved. Food access guaranteed through digital IID, financial stability through CBDC enrollment, social safety through compliance verification. The messaging is clear, unified, and offers immediate relief from overwhelming complexity. The psychology is brutal. So when your cognitive capacity is exhausted, you can't evaluate long-term consequences. You can't analyze power dynamics. You can't consider alternatives. You can only react to immediate threat and grasp at offered solutions. This is why the transition will be fast, compressed into weeks or months rather than years. Time compression prevents adaptation and strategic thinking. Before you've figured out one change, 3 more have been implemented. Before you've organized community response, the enrollment deadline is passed. Before you've considered alternatives, the old system is gone. Studies on decision-making under stress show that cognitive performance drops 50 to 70% when people face multiple simultaneous pressures with time constraints. 50 to 70% reduction in rational thinking capacity. That's the target state for implementing the reset. Compare this to how COVID policies were implemented. Rapid changes, shifting guidelines, contradictory expert advice, social pressure, time-limited decisions. Get vaccinated now or lose your job. Comply with restrictions or businesses close permanently. Enroll in digital passes or lose access. The time compression and cognitive overload made rational resistance incredibly difficult, even for people who were suspicious. The financial reset will use this playbook on steroids, multiple crises. Information chaos, rapid changes, time pressure, and beneath it all, exhaustion. Physical, mental, emotional. Exhausted people don't rebel. They comply because compliance offers rest. Here's what makes this weapon so effective. Even if you understand all the other psychological weapons, cognitive overload can still break you. You might recognize the manufactured scarcity, reject the gaslighting, resist social pressure, and understand the complexity. But when you're overwhelmed, exhausted, and time-pressured while trying to keep your family safe, your resistance capacity degrades. They know this. The reset will be engineered for maximum chaos, minimum clarity, and compressed timeline. By the time you've caught your breath and thought things through, you'll already be enrolled in systems you can't easily exit. The goal is creating conditions where conscious resistance requires superhuman cognitive capacity and emotional resilience. Most people will comply not because they're convinced the system is good, but because they're too overwhelmed to mount effective resistance. During the 2022 energy crisis in Europe, governments implemented rolling blackouts, fuel rationing, and emergency financial measures across 6 countries in 11 days. 11 days from announcement to full implementation. People complied not because they understood the necessity, but because the pace of change made evaluation impossible. That's the blueprint. What you can do: psychological preparations. Trump's financial preparation. Most prepper advice focuses on tangible assets: gold, food, land, weapons. That's necessary but insufficient. If you're not psychologically prepared for the manipulation tactics deployed during the reset, you'll make emotional decisions that undermine your physical preparations. Here's what psychological preparation looks like. First, understand you're fighting a psychological war, not just an economic transition. The tactics described aren't conspiracy theories. They're documented psychological manipulation techniques applied at societal scale. Naming the weapons reduces their effectiveness. When you recognize manufactured scarcity, you don't panic. When you spot gaslighting, you trust your own judgment. When you understand social pressure mechanics, you resist conformity. Knowledge is psychological armor. Second, build community now based on shared values and mutual aid, not just proximity. The social pressure weapon loses effectiveness when you're embedded in a community of people who share your resistance values. You can't be isolated and pressured if you're part of a resilient network. This means actual relationships, people you know, trust, and depend on physically, not just online connections. Third, practice financial independence in small ways now. Use cash regularly. The average American made 87% of transactions digitally in 2023. Every cash transaction you make is practice for operating outside digital surveillance. Participate in barter networks. Learn skills that create value outside formal economy. Build parallel economic relationships. When the reset comes, you'll have mental models and practical experience operating outside the system. You won't be starting from zero. Fourth, deliberately simplify your financial needs and dependencies. The less you need from the system, the less power it has over you. This means reducing consumption, eliminating debt, building self-sufficiency in food and energy, developing multiple income streams. Every dependency you eliminate is leverage you remove from the control system. Fifth, cultivate cognitive resilience through practices that maintain clear thinking under stress. Meditation, journaling, physical training, information fasting. Whatever helps you maintain mental clarity when chaos surrounds you. The time compression weapon loses effectiveness if you can stay calm and think clearly despite external pressure. Research shows that people who practice regular stress management techniques maintain 60 to 80% of normal cognitive function under crisis conditions, versus 50% or less for unprepared individuals. That difference determines whether you can think strategically or only react emotionally. Sixth, establish predetermined decision frameworks now. Decide in advance what you will and won't accept. What's your line? What systems will you refuse, regardless of pressure? When you've made these decisions in advance, during calm, rational moments, you're less likely to abandon them during crisis panic. Seventh, study historical resistance to totalitarian systems. People have resisted authoritarian control throughout history using diverse tactics. Czech Velvet Revolution, Polish Solidarity Movement, black market economies under communism, underground churches, samizdat publishing. Resistance is possible, but it requires knowledge, preparation, and community. The financial reset is coming, the psychological weapons are real and will be deployed. But psychological warfare only works on unprepared minds. If you understand the tactics, build resilient community, and prepare mentally and spiritually, you can maintain your agency and autonomy even as systems change around you. This isn't about predicting exact timelines or specific mechanisms. It's about understanding the psychological architecture of control systems being built and refusing to be psychologically captured by them. The reset they're planning depends on mass psychological compliance. Every person who maintains clear thinking, community bonds, and conscious resistance reduces the system's effectiveness. You don't need to stop the reset. You need to remain psychologically free within it or outside it. That starts with understanding that the real battlefield is your mind, not your bank account. Protect your psychology first. Everything else follows from that foundation. What psychological manipulation tactics are you already seeing deployed? Drop a comment. Strategic awareness, not passive compliance.